let's talk about midterm ratings and exams. So I spent all the weekend finishing up grading your exams and turning them in. And pushing your grades. First off, it's completely possible that I've made an addition error on your exam. So you should be getting you'll get your exam back when in lab. Right now, I know before about an hour and a half ago, I gave them to Kat so she would split them up into the prospective exam sections, and then I think she'll and then I'll probably distribute them tomorrow so you'll get them back in lab, is the point. You know what your grade is, except for those of you who don't, which is like 4 or 5 of you, who basically had to make alternative arrangements or something. There's a couple of you also who I graded, and then I left your graded exams here on campus. So when I was entering the exams online, I didn't actually have them. Kat's entering them now. If you had a missing grade for one of those reasons, which I think was anywhere between 4 to 10 of you, then it's possible that you got an unsatisfactory missing for that. So that's no problem if that's the case. If you got an unsatisfactory because your exam was missing. I just tend to be aggressive on these. If you got below 70 on the exam, I put in an unsatisfactory grade on the unsatisfactory notification. Again, these are midterm ratings, actually have no bearing on your record or anything like that. They're just literally an early alert system to basically because I believe they make you come and see me then in order to sign something so we can discuss what changes need to be made. So that's why we use them. Let's see. So what else was there? Right. And if you hadn't demoed your assignments, or if you had a bunch of stuff that had not been turned in, right? If you hadn't demoed your assignments for your grade, or you hadn't turned them in, then basically I gave then that also would have resulted in one of those unsatisfactory ratings. So so if a bunch of grades got turned into a 0, that's why. It's also possible. So but there's an issue with your grading, and I know a couple people emailed me that. Then just no worries. The reason I haven't gone back with the emails is because I've basically spent all the weekend grading in one shape, form, or another. I spent Friday and Sunday grading. Saturday I spent working on a research paper and submitted it, and that's been my first research paper in a couple years. So, yay me! There's no need for applause. Now you make me feel really guilty. Yeah. So, anyway. Yeah. So, anyway, what have we got? So, that being said, there was one question on the exam that, which was the product digits, that I saw a lot of issues with. A lot of you thought you could iterate over an integer. So that issue was enough that basically that I'll probably put a similar question to that on the second similar to that on the second exam. So keep that in mind. And once I figure out more statistics on the exam, there may be a chance next week to make up points on your exam but I have to discuss that with the TAs. So there may be a chance next week during your lab to make up points. I will discuss that with the TAs, depending on it. It really depends on what the statistics bear out, because I haven't had the chance to run them. Generally, people scored. Honestly, this one had a wide range of scores, but basically it was clustered into that bimodal distribution. Basically, if people got it or you didn't get it. So, I also saw a lot of very interesting answers, and that was kind of interesting and correct. So, which is always incredibly interesting to me. All right, so a couple things. I've released the newest homework, which is the Hurricane Irma simulator, or the hurricane tracker. That one doesn't have an associated PDF. It's got all the data you need right there, as well as a video showing what our expected output is. my biggest, so doing this took me about, from me doing it, took me about like an hour and a half to do it. And about half of that time was spent trying to figure out what in the world was going on with my turtle just going off in weird, random, not great places. And it was because I mixed up longitude and latitude and X and Y coordinates, right? Longitude and latitude and X and Y. Make sure you look up which is which, because I did not. Look up which is which. Okay, that should just hopefully save you that like 45 minutes of head desking that I was doing. But otherwise it's fairly straightforward file reading stuff. So we're gonna continue in our vein of file reading. We're gonna continue reading specifically our Shakespeare file. Right, now, all right, Shakespeare, which again is the complete works of William Shakespeare, a 5 megabyte file. Now, one of the things we are going to do, and we're going to introduce a new data structure, which is called the dictionary today, as part of it. Now, the dictionary is an extremely powerful data structure. So let's go ahead and just show it to you first. I'll put up some homework reading. Oh, right, that was the last part. The homework readings, right? Most of you got 5 on that. The vast majority of you. If you got a 3 or a 1 or a 0, which were the other scores, again, I did it basically by eye, basically based off your student progress. Basically, have you been reading the textbook and such? So if there's an issue with it and you've actually been reading the textbook and you feel like that's not reflected, just come and see me or send me an email and we'll correct that. Okay, it's quite possible that basically that I misread something. Or I just simply put the wrong grade in the wrong person's field because when there's 180 of you, I'm going to make a mistake at some point. Right? The class before, I had an addition error that brought a student up from an 86 to a 96. So you get a lot of students. You do repetitive additions. It's easy to miss something somewhere. Okay, it's not an exact process, so you just got to make sure, and you need to advocate for yourself if I make a mistake, because I fully admit to my human flaws. All right, so a dictionary, or a dict, D-I-C-T, is created similar to creating a list, right? A list looks like this. I don't want to power off. No. Okay. A dictionary looks like this. Dictionaries, if you've been programming in another language, might have been called an associative array or a hash table or a hash map. They are used for three things. They are used for basically creating key value pairs, which is a really abstract way of saying basically you can use them for 3 things. You can use them for basically creating a lookup ID to something else. So for instance, an example of that is like your student ID, right? The reason we give you a student ID is not because we as an institution view you as basically a numbered, nameless cog in this machine that basically produces degrees in exchange for money, right? We don't view you like that, although it may feel like that at times, right? The reason that you have an ID is because your name is not a great identifier for you. So for instance, when I was in middle school, went to a private middle school, and then I entered in the 6th grade, and somebody had just graduated from that middle school in the 8th grade who was also named Andrew Rosen. So I kept getting asked for some reason, was I related to this person? Of course, and was I related to the person with the same name as me? No, I was not. But basically, as you can see, my name, that led to just some minor confusion there. Okay. Similarly, there's probably somebody in this room probably has somebody at the university with the same name as them. Definitely the same first, maybe the same last too. It's very possible. In this room, probably 2 of you probably have the same birthday. I bet money on it. Without actually having looked at your birthdays or anything like that. I would actually bet like $5 that you 2 guys had. Yeah, not much money, but enough to say that I put my money where my mouth. But the point being is that basically that these kind of stuff Your names and your birthdays are not great identifiers because they're not unique. The number we create for you, however, is unique. So you give us that number, we can look up all the other information about you, right? That's the kind of way that would work, right? We could say something like D, and I will use, let's see, my ID, D915 467 994 is equal to Andrew Rosen, right? Notice it accepted that, even though it was empty. No out of bounds exception or anything. And if I print the dictionary, it says 915 467 994 colon Andrew Rosen. Basically, this is saying this is the key, this is the value. And so if I put in D, if I ask it for D915467994, it will produce Andrew Rosen. If I ask it for 995, on the other hand, it will tell me that key error, meaning that that key does not exist. Similarly, it will tell me if I were to put in key 0, it says that cannot exist, or that does not exist. A good lie to tell yourselves about the way dictionaries work is that dictionaries are essentially lists where you are in charge of creating the index. Okay, that misses some of the subtleties of them, but it's a good way to start thinking about them. You can create whatever index you want in a dictionary. Okay, so I could say, for instance, that D0 is equal to test pupil. D1 is equal to, let me go ahead and put it, example instructor, right? And now if I print out the dictionary, notice it has 915 467 994, Andrew Rosen, then test pupil, then example instructor. It's not really in order at all, except for maybe the order I put it in. Although if I were to put in, 995, right, if I were to increment this by 1, right, 915 467 995 as opposed to 994, and put in Wordna Rosen, okay, just my name spelled backwards there, and print out the dictionary, okay. So apparently it's just kind of keeping it in the order that I put it in. Okay, so anyway, if I put in 0 now, it will give me the value. So if I give it the key 0, it gives me the value test pupil, right? 0, test pupil. That's the binding I created. If I put in 1, it'll give me example instructor. If I put in over here, word na Rosen, gives me key error, word na Rosen. Notice that didn't tell me that strings couldn't be keys, by the way. D color is equal to blue. This is the big difference that with one of the biggest differences with dictionaries. The keys can be pretty much anything. Pretty much anything. So you can make a key, unlike an index, be a string or something like that. Which leads us to the second thing we can do with these, is that we can count things. We can say basically, let's go ahead and do a very easy example with our Shakespeare. Let's go ahead and count the number of times luck has been seen. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a variable called count is equal to, it's just going to be a basic dictionary. And this is going to be completely stupid the way I'm doing this at first, but we're going to expand this into doing a full word count, as it's called. Okay. count is equal to whatever. Okay, so for line in text, we're going to go through the entirety of the William Shakespeare, right? And then again, just to remind everybody, we are going to split it. I believe we have a quiz today on that, on splitting and joining. So line.split right? And this says to split on spaces. Basically, that says to split on nothing. This says to split on spaces, right? Text is read lines. So here, and what I could do is I could just print out words. And we can see basically it's printing everything out into words. So let's see so what I'm going to do is I'm going to re-comment this in. Count is, count, and why I'm doing it like this will make sense in a second. Count luck is equal to 0. The key here is luck. The value is 0. And what I'm going to do is I want to go through and count the number of times that that Bill Shakespeare has said luck. I also want to count the number of times he said happy. And I would like to count the number of times that he said that he used the word the. Okay? Okay? Actually, let's go with few, because we know we've seen few a couple times when he does that Agincourt speech, we happy few. It's a very good speech. They made a movie out of it. By the way, my advice is that if you have to take like a literature class or something, try your best to get into a Shakespeare class, because that essentially becomes mandatory movie watching once a week. Because Shakespeare, unlike most of other literature, is not meant to be read. It's meant to be watched because it's a performance. Don't read the play. Watch the play. Becomes mandatory movie watching, essentially. The movies are 2 hours long, and there's probably a good performance with actors you like. At the very least, what's his face? Patrick Stewart, I know, is like a big Shakespeare guy. That's what his background was before he got into Star Trek. So let's go through and say for word in words, right? Not word in lines, because what we've taken this single string, and what we've done is that we split it into a list of strings. That's what split does. It splits it into a list of strings. So words is a list of a bunch of strings, or words is a bunch of lists. So for each individual word in words, if word in count. In other words, if it's one of the words we're keeping track of, okay? If word is in count, right? Let's again kind of take a look at that. What does that mean? So we've seen the in statement before, right? We can do, help. So let's see, go ahead and say like LL in help. Oh, sorry, the string LL in help. False. But in hello, that's true. What about LL in hello, comma, world? In this case, it's asking if LL is an item in here, so that's why it returned false. It's not checking all the strings, it's just checking. So what in does depends on the context, okay? On the other hand, so what does this mean for a dictionary, right? Where, let's say we have count, right? Hello. Count hello is equal to, sorry. So count equals new dictionary. Count hello is equal to 1. World is equal to 5. So if I were to say 1 in count, that returns false. What it cares about is the keys, not the values. So if I were to say is hello in count, is that one of the keys we're using? Yes, it is. What about world? It is. What about spam? Is that one of the keys we're using? No. What about 5? Is that one of the keys? No, 5 is a value here, right? Key being what goes in the bracket. And the value, honestly, isn't that important. It's what's bound to it. So what we're doing is we're saying over here, if it's luck, happy, or few, then what we're going to do is that we're going to simply say we're going to get the previous total is equal to count of that word. So get the amount of times that word appeared. And then say count of that word is equal to prev plus 1, which we could simply just actually simplify. Ugh. I'm being repeatedly repetitive today. Okay. We could just simply simplify it to that. Get the count of the word should become the count of that word plus 1 that we've already seen. And then, actually, that's it. Print count. Right, no need to print the words out as well. So Shakespeare used the word luck 9 times, happy 164 times, and few 47 times. Probably. Because one of the things the split function does is, since it's splitting along spaces, we don't have just spaces. We have things like commas and the like. So we can, and periods. So we might say, and some of them might be uppercase and lowercase. So we might want to check, we might want to clean it up. Word is equal to word dot lower to set it to lowercase. Let's see if that changes the count. I think few went up a couple times, right? So that changed it, right? Your computer cares whether things are uppercase or lowercase. If we also were to do word is equal to word dot strip, which rips things out from the ends of it. Strip will just takes care of white space. But if I give it an argument like a comma, if there's leading or trailing commas, then it's going to rip that out. And notice that few went up there, as well as luck and happy. Right? There were a lot of times where we were splitting up a word and it must have been like happy, comma, or luck, comma. Right? And that was being counted as one separate word. So this is actually a particularly powerful data structure, being able to create a dictionary like that and say, I'd like to count these things. So the big thing about dictionaries, we can use them for that key value store, which is kind of generic, but basically if you're using it for a database, like here's the key, I'd like everything associated with this. Here's the customer's email address, let me pull up all the information on the customer, right? Where that might be a big string or a different date or an object or something like that, which we haven't gotten into writing objects, that's okay. The more common use we're going to see in this class for using it is for counting, when you want to count arbitrary things. So for instance, if we wanted to count the occurrence of letters, we'd want to use a dictionary, right? Remember how basically we did that whole thing with like in encryption where we basically were saying, okay, A is going to go to, the A is going to go to the E is going to go to the, so we subtract A from everything and then add it and add the key mod by 26. Remember we were doing that last week and that was a pain in the butt, right? So you'd have to do something similar for that if you wanted to count the number of characters and just use a list. But with a dictionary, counting the number of characters actually becomes pretty easy. So I'm going to comment out these guys over here. And we're going to use this to count stuff. So first off, we get our lines. So we get our for each line in the text. And I'm not going to bother splitting it over here because I'm just going to count the characters. Okay. So for line in text, and we'll just simply go for character in line, right? I'm not splitting it up. I'm going line by line through the text, going through each character one at a time. I'm not splitting it up this time. Because what I want to do is I want to now count, and rather than a specific word, let's try counting all the characters. See how often each character appears, right? How common each character is. So we're going to go one character at a time. So for character in line, and the way this now works is that we say if character in count. So in other words, have we seen this character yet? We'll do that. Let's go if we've not seen it though yet. Yeah, if we've not seen this character before. So if character not in count. If we've not counted this character before, we get to a letter and we see a Z. We haven't seen this Z yet. What do? Count of that character, Z in this case, is equal to 1. We've seen it once, right? Makes sense? We go through, we find a character we haven't seen yet. We say, hey, we've seen it once. That's how this is what this line does. I know this might be going over your head a bit, but don't worry. It does become more clear the more you use these, and they're extremely powerful. Count. Otherwise, if we've seen the character before, we say the count of that character is equal to the count of that character plus 1. And then we just print it again. And we go and count all these characters, and we see that basically that we have this weird Unicode character appeared once, the $ appeared twice, the AE symbol appeared 41 times, the E with this weird, I don't know, not an umlaut, whatever that diacritic mark is, appeared 40 times. You know what? I'm interested. Let's print out some more interesting, like, not just that. Let's print out what the characters we're interested in. Let's see how much E appeared. And why don't we go ahead and just make all the characters lowercase. So we'll just keep it. So we'll print out the number of times E appeared, as well as capital E, and we'll print out space. So it goes through, it counts them. It takes a while because it's counting all those. So E appeared 416 times. There were 36,000, almost 37,000 capital E's. And then there were 1,000,000 spaces. 1,000,000.1 spaces in there. So dictionaries are pretty powerful. And again, all we're doing to read this file is just going through and kind of just counting stuff up like that. Let's talk a bit more about splitting and joining, just to see it more in action before we go into the quiz. Okay. So, 3, right? Right. The default behavior for splitting, right, is if I take a thing and say, hello, how are you today? ? And if I say, let's go ahead and say string is equal to that. If I say string.split without any arguments, it will use a what it will do is it will split it into a list using this string using spaces by default, or rather white space by default. Which appears the same thing. So hello, comma, right? Hello and comma, right? That's one thing. And then it skips over the space and goes how, skips over the next space, are you today with the question mark. Okay? Makes sense so far? Right? Split is not a particularly difficult operator. It's a pretty powerful operator, though. If, on the other hand, I were to give it the comma to split it, it would go, hello, and how are you today, as the two elements. We've got one comma, and what it does is it breaks it up into a list, split up by the character we want. If I were to pass it HO, it would go hello, space, and up until it hits the HO, and it says that's how you wanted to split it up. You wanted to split it up by ho. So perhaps like maybe this would work for Santa or something like that, you know. If you give it nothing, it will say you can't do that. You can't split it by nothing. You kind of get an infinite sequence in that case. But split is pretty cool in that regard. So if we split it up by spaces, we get a list. And then you can use the join operator, .join, which we don't use that often, but you can combine things with the join operator. And I saw some people use it on the exam, oddly enough, which was really weird, and some people used it because they were completely lost, and some people used it because they saw it as a tool they could use, and it was an unorthodox tool, but it worked. So then you say a string that you want to glue everything together with, an L. And here I'm saying I want to glue everything together with the empty string. So it combined all of those together. Hello, how are you today? Because it says I want to glue everything together in list into one string. And I'm going to glue each of these individual strings together using the empty string, which brings it all together. If I were to give it one space, it would glue it together, glue all those individual strings together using one space. If I were to give it ho, it would go, hello, ho, how are you? Yeah, Santa would think, that would be even tougher Santa, I think. Actually, that becomes hello, ho, ho, who are you, ho today, which is pretty interesting. But you can put whatever you want here to combine things. So, hello, how are you today, right? That kind of stuff. Notice that it doesn't come out at the end, by the way, right? It's just gluing the things together. This gets combined in between the things. All right, so, but that's really all. But split and join are, right, they're inverse operations. I can split something up, and then I can say .join string.split, and I basically get what I just came, that's like multiplying by the inverse, essentially. Multiplying by the inverse and multiplying by the inverse again. I end up with what I started with. Or multiplying by -1, right? Here, I split it apart and join back together. And then again, there's nothing stopping me from splitting it apart again. Because I can. Invalid syntax, right? So you could chain those things together, although why in God's name would you want to do that? You wouldn't. So let's go ahead and let's go ahead and do a quiz. There is the it is the split and join quiz. It is up online, and there should not be a password on it, which means that one of you took it, and the reason I haven't been able to silence it is because one of you took it. So, which is why it's been out there, and people have been asking me that why I've done it. So go ahead and work on the split and join quiz and see how that works out. I'm going to go ahead and create There is an access code. There is an access code. Is it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? I doubt it. Let me go ahead and log up and open up Canvas and take a look at what it is. And then I'm going to bring up some stuff kind of relevant I'm going to do some relevant stuff for so the dictionaries aren't going to be relevant yet. It was just a cool time when you're doing file readings, a good time to introduce them. what I'm going to do next is more file reading with regards to what we've been working on. And then we're going to also talk about file writing. So I'm going to do some file reading and then some file writing after we do this. Split and join. The access code is 555. So that's 3 5s in a row. There's an unlimited number of attempts on this, so you should be able to eventually get all 20 points of it. Okay. So I will pause this video, and then we will get to do the next, and then I'm going to create my our next part of this.